Hello guys, welcome back to the second installment of making your own Windows domain tutorials. In this episode, we're going to be looking at setting up a domain controller. In the previous episode, and if you haven't watched that one, I recommend that you go to that one now. The link is in the description below to get to it, because if you don't watch that one, then you might get a little bit confused, because I might refer to things that we did in the first episode. So, as I said in the previous episode, we're doing this in a virtual environment, but it will also work if you're doing it in real life. It kind of translates, and I'll let you know if there's any areas which are virtualization only, and areas which are perhaps real life only, and areas which work with both. So, in this episode, as I just said, we're going to carry on where we left off before. In the last episode, we finished configuring our server so that we could actually start working on it. And obviously the server operating system is Windows Server 2008 R2. And today, in this episode, we're going to look at creating our own domain controller. Let's get to that. So our machine's booting up now. You find that when you first install it, it'll be applying lots of update operations, and it will be updating quite regularly. But it'll soon slow once you've got quite a lot of updates on. It should stop updating. Well, obviously it will update now and again, obviously, but you know, at the moment you'll get quite a lot of updates because it's new. And if for some reason Windows doesn't actually get all the updates and install them all at once, it kind of like installs perhaps, I don't know, 50 or 60 at a time or something like that. As you can see, it's just configuring Windows updates now, so you'll get this a lot when you first install your operating system. I also recommend that you get the Service Pack 1 installed as well. So now we're at the logon stage, we can log on. I'm going to use our local password. But I've got the notes right. Okay. Okay, so we're logged onto our server now, which is great news. And again, initial configuration tasks are going to load up, but we don't really need that anymore. We don't really have any need for it. We've done everything that we need to do. The only two things we need to do is add roles and add features, but we can do that within the main server manager. So I'm going to check the box that says "Do not start this at startup." Obviously, you can still open it up if you wish, but you can still open it up manually if you want to. So what we want to do now is we're going to actually start and create our domain, and we can open up the server manager to do that, as you can see. So this is basically where you configure all what's going on in your server, and as you can see, there's even server manager remote configuration. Now we're not going to do that for now. We're just going to leave it as such, like this. So this is our main server manager. Everything that goes on in the server is pretty much configured here. There are a few things such as group policy, which are in administrative tools and are a different program, but we'll look at that later on. We won't see that yet because we haven't installed the service. So what we need to do now is we need to add a role to our server, and the role we're going to add is called Active Directory Domain Services. You can see it here, the second one from the top. We'll check the box. And you'll also need to add Microsoft.NET Framework 3.5.1. You can click; it'll install automatically if you click on Add Required Features. Okay. So once you've checked that box and clicked on Add Features to Microsoft.NET Framework 3.5.1, click Next. Just you can read this if you want, but it just basically tells you what Active Directory Domain Service does. It stores information about users, computers, and other devices on the network. ADDS helps administrators securely manage this information and facilities, and facilitates resource sharing and collaboration between users. ADDS is also required for directory-enabled applications such as Microsoft Exchange Server and for other Windows Server technologies such as group policy. Okay, so we need to now install the ADDS. So we're going to click Next. It's also prompting us to, well, it's also mentioning that it's going to install .NET Framework 3.5.1 as well. That's fine, we can just let that install. Okay, so it's just installing now, and as again, As I said, I'll be right back once it's finished installing. Okay, so Active Directory Domain Services was installed successfully, as so was .NET Framework 3.5.1. So we can close that down now. Instantly though, we get an error message, and don't worry, this is normal, this should happen. Nothing abnormal has happened here. So if we go to our roles, you can see Active Directory Domain Services appears now. But if you look at System Services, you know, there's a lot of errors, you see. And at the moment it's not even started, but it's not running as a domain controller yet. Okay, so what we need to do now is actually configure it to work properly. So what you need to do is go to Run and type in dcpromo.exe, and you should see it says checking if the Active Directory Domain Services are installed. Well, you don't want to check this one really. You can do if you want, but I don't bother doing that. It's fine. But what you're going to do is click Next. You can read that if you want, but I never bother. And what we want to do is create a new domain and a new forest. If you happen to be part of a network, and you've already got a forest domain, you can create more than one domain controller. The good thing about this is that if the main domain controller fails, or for some reason isn't working, then adding another domain controller will mean that users will still be able to log on and do stuff on the domain. But since we've never done it before, well, since this is a new network, we want to create a new domain and a new forest. Now we want to type in the fully qualified domain name of the Windows domain. Now you can call it whatever you want, and I'm going to call it MFJ domain just for this demonstration purposes. Or let's just say MFJ network. Okay. Now it's important though, this is not a fully qualified domain name yet. If you have access to the internet, you can type in a full domain, such as like as it says there, for example, corp.contoso.com, which if you use a VPN connection, users outside of a local area network can connect. If you're doing it just for a local area network, you want to type in .local next after it. Okay. Now click Next, and it's just going to check whether the new forest name is already in use. It shouldn't be. No, it can't be because it's the only what's its name there. So now I'm going to verify the NetBIOS name and see whether it meets the service requirements. You'll find that the domain name, when you're logging on, it will be in capitals, not lowercase. Now we can select the forest functionality level. If you select Windows 2000, you can. It's not really advised that you use Windows 2000. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the latest one, Windows Server 2008 R2. This will give me the most system compatibility. But if I, for example, try to create a domain controller in this forest, but I was running Windows Server 2008, 2003, or Windows 2000, I wouldn't be able to make it. But for functionality, check the latest version. Now I want to click Next, and now we need to create a DNS server. I explained this in the previous episode, that DNS is very important for Active Directory Domain Services. Anything to do with domain names basically are all linked to IP addresses. And so that when a user logs on, instead of it saying the IP address of the server, it will simply say like MFJ network. So a DNS server will translate the MFJ network to an IP address, and it would actually in this case translate it to 192.168.56.2. So you want to check the box that says DNS server, click Next, just click yes to the warning message. You can leave it as it is here. You can change it if you want, but I recommend you don't do so, and just click Next. Now you want to create a password for the administrator account that will be used for the domain, not a local machine. So we're going to type in, well, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to type in, but you can make up a password. Next. Okay, and you can see here the net BIOS name of the domain is mfj-network, and it'll work. Forest functionality level will work with at least Windows Server 2008 R2, which is what we're running here. Everything else is absolutely fine. The computer will be configured to use this DNS server, so that will auto install another role. We can just click next, and it's going to now configure Active Directory domain services. As it says, this process can take from a few minutes to several hours. So, well, as I said before, I'll be back once it's finished installing. Okay, so the domain has completed its installation. It's also created another role, which is obviously a DNS server. So we can click finish now, and we need to do a restart for it to take effect. So let's do so. Okay, so it's just rebooting now. Okay, it's still waiting for it to boot up. Okay, so just applying computer settings now. And notice something very different when this computer finally boots up. Is that it'll say log on to, or should I say it'll come up with a domain name now. So we're just going to wait for it to complete. Takes quite a while really. Okay, so one thing I'll notice is, well, it said Control D before, didn't it? But one thing I'll notice now is it says MFG Network /administrator. Now it's still asking to log on to. It's asking to log on to a domain now, but we can actually switch to a different user account. Click on Switch User, Other User. You can see it says MFJ Network. Very good. So we can log in now with an administrator account. And this is a domain administrator account. This is different to a PC user account, just to let you know. I think I've put the password wrong. Nope. Okay, so it's just logging in now. Alright, so there you go. The Active Directory domain services and everything like that is installed, and it's actually ready for use now. We can join clients to the domain and do all that fun stuff. But it's quite a long way to go yet. Now, the reason I said that is because clients need to know the DNS server to be able to connect to the domain. And well, if you're in a place where you've got lots of computers, it's probably take a while to go around everywhere and put in the DNS server address in each computer. So what you can do is use what's called DHCP, and that'll give you an IP address to a computer, but it'll also give it a default gateway and a subnet mask and DNS server, which is very what we need, what we need it to do. But the problem is with VirtualBox, you can't do it with VirtualBox for some reason. It doesn't work. I don't know why. I'm going to try it again though, just to see if perhaps I did something wrong or something. I don't know. But last time I attempted to create a DHCP server, it failed, and the clients weren't configured. So I just did it manually. It was easier. I only had 2 machines that are configured anyway. But I advise that if you've got loads of workstations, using DHCP really quickens things up when you're setting them up. So let's create a DHCP server so that clients get an IP address and a DNS server automatically. So you want to add another role, and you want to select DHCP server. Okay, click next. Click next. You've got 2 IP addresses here. You want to select this one here. Uncheck the first one. The first one here is a connection to the internet. The other one is a connection to a domain. This one here. So if you're doing it in real life, you'll only have one probably. Hopefully, unless you've got 2 network connections. So we're going to disable the first one, but enable the second one. Click next. We're going to put the parent domain in, and the DNS server is the IP of this. Now, when it said 127.0.0.1, that's also localhost, which is this machine. If I leave that in though, when the client gets it, it thinks, oh, DNS server's here, right on this computer, but it's not. So we have to put the IP address in of this machine, or else it will fail. Okay, we don't want wins at the moment. Add a scope. So we have to add a scope so that we can select how many clients can be connected. So we're going to start with 192.168.56.100, and the ending will be 192.168.56.254. Subnet type will be wired. Lease duration will be 8 days. Okay. Default gateway also needs to be 192.168.56.1, and that's okay. So now we've added our scope. We can click next. Activate scope will be enabled automatically. We want enable DHCP version 6 stateless mode, and the reason why we're just using this is because we don't want to use IPv6 yet. It's something that people are working on, but at the moment it's not used yet. The IPv6 really. Now we can just click next again there. Use the current credentials, and you can see all the settings that will be configured. So default gateway, everything here. Alright. And click on install, and you should begin. So as I said last time, I'll skip the installation because it doesn't take long really, but yeah, see you in a second then. Okay, so the DHCP server is successfully installed. Already, we've got an error message. You see, the problem that we have is that our default gateway is being used. So we kind of have a problem there. As you can see, if you look at our roles, you can see there's an error there. And if you look at the latest error, which is 1620, okay, you can see it said it failed to see a server for authorization. Again, it's fair to find it. Now, it is determined it's not authorized to start and it's not servicing clients. The reason why, I think, is because there's a DHCP service already running in the network. So, I suppose what we can try is, this won't really apply if you're not doing it virtually, is we can try and using and obtaining a DNS and IP address automatically. So we can close that, and we can restart the service. There we go. Alright, so our server is off and running again. So far we've got no errors. Seems to be quite good, really. So we're going to check now to see whether or not we can service clients. So we can see there's no error messages at the moment, so it seems to be okay. So that completes this episode of creating your own domain and also setting up a DHCP server so as users can connect to it. Okay, and we have, so in this video we've set up our domain now, and we also have a DHCP and DNS server. Everything should be up and running now, and users should be able to connect. So in the next episode we're going to look at joining a client PC to our domain. See you next.